Hey guys, so this is part 2 of the coach walk with the coach session, and in this session we're going to cover about the Destiny also wants to do exercise. So in this session, I wanted to talk to coach about the kinetic exercises, kinetic chain exercises that coach has given us.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure all of you guys are doing it meticulously, and you're doing a great job at it. And so one question I wanted to ask Coach B is, I mean, you have given us these 3 types of exercises for 3 various
Yep.
areas
Like
of the
lower body,
body,
hip, and upper body. Yep.
upper body. So, which do you think is the most important of the 3? I mean, is there an important of the 3?
No, that's a great question. Like, I mean, all are important, but I know all of us have a life to lead also.
Exactly.
I'm sure sometimes you have to prioritize, sometimes you just don't have the time to do the entire thing. So, knowing the bare minimum, like the brilliant minimum that you need to do to build, it's a great question, Raghu. All these muscles are important.
Right.
So that's why it's a kinetic chain. So if you think about it as a chain, the chain is as strong as its weakest link. So if you just miss out on a couple of links and then strengthen the other links, then the chain is anyway going to be weak.
Correct.
So
Good
from that perspective, if you think about it, every part of it is, every muscle on the chain is an important thing for us to develop. But that's just one way of looking at it. But life happens. Sometimes we cannot do everything. So if you ask me, if you put me in a corner and say, Coach, if there is one thing I really want to nail this season, which one should be?
Exactly, yeah.
If that is, I paraphrase your question like that, then I would say, guys, hands down, by not just by a little margin, I'm talking about like a margin of, if I have 100 chips and if I have to separate the 100 chips into the most important, I would say 50 will go into this muscle group and the remaining 50 goes into all other muscle group. That's the level of importance for this muscle group. And what do you think is that?
I think it probably is I would use what part of my body as the most, maybe the central part, so maybe the hip side.
You got it.
The hip.
The hips is the core of running. And when let's talk about, let me define hips, right? So again, a lot of doctors here. So I'll always give a caveat when I explore myself a little bit into the medical territory because, I'm not a doctor, but from a coach standpoint, it's very important that all of us understand what does hips do during running. It's so important because once you understand that, you will know why that is the most important thing. You know what I mean? So there are 2 or 3 ways in which I'm going to explain to you the power and the why hips are the most important. So it's a great answer. So if you think about running, I just told you in the previous message, what is running? It's a series of single leg squats with a flight stance in between. That's really what it is. You're just going, if you think like this, if I go back a little bit, you're like this. So it's a single leg and then you're flying in between to the next single leg. That's really what you're doing, right? This motion of transmission of power from one single leg to flight to the other single leg starts off and remains at the hip position. So let me give you a few things about how to understand the importance of hips in running. So in joints, whenever you think about in medical term, there is a term used when what's a joint? A joint is when there is bone on either side of the joint and the bones are moving around the joint. That's what is a joint, right? Any joint you think about it mechanically, that's what it is.
Ball and socket joint.
Yeah, you can take ball and socket joint, hip joint, the foot, ankle, knee, anywhere. There are bone on either side of the joint and the bones are moving around the joint. Movement. That's really the standard, right? That's why it's a joint. In a medical term, if you want to understand it, if the bones around the joint is coming towards the joint, it is called flexion. That means, let's take the knee. If both these, like the tibia and the thigh bone is coming towards each other, like the bone is coming towards each other, that means it is towards the joint, it's called flexion. If it goes away from the joint, it is called extension. Flexion, extension, right?
Simple enough.
Simple, very easy. So in the hips, if you think about it, let's get back to the single leg squat and running, what is happening? First thing is you are putting your leg forward. So if you think about it from a hip side, what is happening? Your thigh bone is coming towards the hip. right? If you're going like this, your thigh bone is coming towards the lip. What is that? It is coming towards the hip. So it's flexion, right? First is flexion. There is a flexion of all the thigh muscles, and when you land on the foot and when you go back, the thigh muscle is going back. So it is extension. So there is a flexion first, extension later. So when you're running, guys, when you're running, you land. The real power of running happens when you push your foot, toe, and push it backwards. That extension is what is pushing the reaction, like the action and reaction. That extension of your thigh muscle is what is pushing you forward, and that is what is running.
Wow.
Think about that. Biomechanics. This is biomechanics.
That's a great explanation.
Right?
Yeah.
So flexion's job is just to put your leg forward. Extension's job is to push your body forward, like almost like a catapult. So if you have a strong extension muscles, the strong hip extension muscles, that propels you forward. The muscle that gives you the strongest extension muscle is your glute maximus. Glute maximus is the biggest muscle on your butt.
Oh.
The glute maximus is the biggest hip extension muscle. If the glute fires, the glute maximus fires, you are having a powerful extension movement, and hip is pushing your body forward. That's running. Most runners, especially rookie runners, they run with their quads and hamstrings. They don't run with their hips. Or in other words, their hips are sleeping. There is no, the extension is happening because you're running, but the extension muscles are not sort of helping. It is the thigh muscle which is doing some other job, is you're forcing it to do the job of extension. And that is why a runner, rookie runners, they waste a lot of energy in running when you have to run with your butt or your hips. Now, the question is, how do I run with the butt?
Exactly.
Kinetic chain strength.
Oh yeah.
That
All
was
comes
the
around,
question.
right?
That
It
was
all-
the question.
It all binds back.
Yes, the question was, what is the most important set of exercises I need to do? The most important set of exercises you need to do is to get the nerve muscle connection going for your muscles, butt muscle, which is the extension muscle, glute maximus. We talked about glute medius before. We'll come back to it right now. But glute maximus is your core extension muscle, which helps your body to push forward in your flight stance, running posture. And that is what is going to help you move forward. So that is my point number 2. Let's talk about the last point, which will kind of help you bridge everything together. Now, let me step back for a second. Just look at my hip. So my hip is like, imagine there is like a straight line in my hip, right? So when I land on one foot, and when the second foot goes forward, what is happening to this line? This is stable. This line is moving a circular motion, right? This is, imagine a line like this. This one is moving like this, like a circular motion, right? So if you have a line like this, imagine this is the hip line. This is stable, this point is stable, and this point is rotating. And if it goes in the circular motion, what is happening? My right foot should be going inwards, right? If you think about it, it's like the catwalk of models, right? Like where they all put it in this one line and walk like this. So the right foot need to go inside because that's the circular motion, right? So if the right foot moves inside, then you're running, you're going to trip on each other, on your own foot. It's a bad form of running. Why is the right foot not going inside? If you ask that question, if one leg is stationary on the ground, the other leg is being pushed by the hip, then it's a circular motion that is happening on that one. That means the right leg has to be pulled inside. That's a circle, right? It's a radius. But it is not going in, it is actually moving away from the circle. That means what is happening? Think. That means it is not doing a circle. The hip is actually extending. That is called hip abduction. So every time a leg lands, glute maximus pushes you forward, and another set of muscle helps you to abduct, abduction that's called, where your hip expands. And when your hip expands, you don't go the circle, you go straight forward and you land. You understand? That's what you land like this. That is what is happening. A hip abduction is happening, and the muscle that helps in expanding the muscle is glute medius, which also provides you the stability. So if you think about this, if you want to do a great running, you need glute maximus to push you forward so that the butt helps you to run for the hip extension, which is the leg moving backwards. That is when the running takes place. And you want the hip to expand so that your right leg doesn't act like a catwalk model and come right in front of your left leg and then you trip or stability gets messed up. You need the glute medius to expand your hip so that you are going straight, and hence you have a beautiful single leg stability. That's the beautiful single leg stability in one hand, and hence you have efficiency in running, and hips controls your running. That's your answer, my friend.
Thank you so much. One quick question
Yes.
before we close the session.
Yeah.
So all the things that you explained, is there a difference between running in a plain field versus uphill?
Yes. So uphill, so it's a great question too. In uphill, because of the gravity that is acting on the muscles, more muscles need to fire in addition to your core, in addition to your hip to maintain stability. So that's why I give you hills running, so that it provides you additional load on the muscles on various other parts of the muscle group in the kinetic chain that helps you to hold and does all the job.
So that's why.
That's why hills.
I feel it.
Hills, that's why it's
Yeah.
super important. I know junior runners, don't worry, it's not for you. It's this is only for senior runners, but it's a great question from a senior runner, and there's a lot of senior runners as well. So hills is a running that helps you to strengthen your muscle strength, nerve muscle connections, and hills is an important part of the overall exercise. So in summary, guys, if there is only one exercise you can do and you should do, it's always the hip exercises, especially the hip extension and hip abduction. Hip extension is a function of glute maximus. Hip abduction is a function of glute medius. Combination of these two provides you the stability and the power that is required for you to push your body forward. And glute can be strengthened only when you have the muscle nerve connection activated. And for that, you better do your kinetic chain strength exercises. Period. I rest my point. Let's meet you in the next message.
Thank you. That was enlightenment for me, and good answer from Coach B. Thank you very much, Coach.
Thanks a lot, guys.